Welcome to Conducting Parkinson's Conversations. Today, my guest is Dr. Dawn Rose. Dawn is a prominent music psychologist and senior researcher whose pioneering work explores how rhythm and music can be used to manage movement and improve the quality of life for individuals living with Parkinson's disease. As co-founder of the innovative Playlist for Parkinson's initiative, she helps bridge the gap between complex academic findings and the community by translating research into live concerts and curated digital audio resources. By blending her background as a professional drummer with advanced neurological research, Dr. Rose successfully champions patient-centered accessible approaches to neurorehabilitation and emotional well-being.
Shall I tell you a little bit about how for Parkinson's came about?
Please, let's like because I just think that it's such an amazing project, and this playlist for Parkinson's is just amazing. So tell me all about it.
So I actually am a drummer, and so of course, first of all, was interested in rhythm. And I got like a small grant from Parkinson's UK. It was called a network grant. It was just like £3,000. And we had a Parkinson's advisory group at the university I was working at then. And I kind of learned from them that they found working with scientists kind of intimidating, but also annoying. And they were fed up of being shown pictures of brains and being told what was wrong with them and being described as end users and things like this. So I used this network grant to try and bring a whole range of scientists together with a group of about 10, 12 people with Parkinson's. And I paired them all up. And first of all, everyone had to introduce themselves with a song. So no titles, none of that kind of like, oh, I'm an expert in this. Like everyone's here as an expert in themselves. And people with Parkinson's are the experts in having Parkinson's. And so because we were really I was trying to work out what is important to research about using music. And there's such an emphasis on like a deficit model of research and what can we find out from what's wrong with this brain. And it was very clear people with Parkinson's wanted to know, well, what can I do? What can I actually do to help myself? And how can music help? And through this kind of interaction, I gave everyone tasks like, what ways do you use music? And then I could kind of separate out like the people with Parkinson's from the scientists. But I mean, the amazing thing was the scientists said they learned more in one day of being with a person with Parkinson's than they'd ever learned in a textbook. And the people with Parkinson's felt like, yes, we kind of showed them like we actually know what we're talking about. And it gave us a kind of list of uses of music that was super interesting because, we all think of music engagement as a rewarding experience, but no one had really looked at, well, is that the same for people with Parkinson's? And, the number one thing was we listened to music because it's aesthetically, beautiful. And for entertainment, the same as everyone listens to music. There was no basic difference. But there were some interesting differences in terms of lots of people listen to music for mood management to make themselves feel excited when they're getting ready to go out or, if they're having a breakup, they might listen to some sad love songs or something like this. But it came really clear early on that people were listening to music to help motivate themselves just to do things that other people might take for granted. So like creating playlists to help themselves get out of bed in the morning, but also listening to music to help like it had a restorative purpose. So if they'd been doing something like trying to go to a doctor's appointment and some idiot had parked in like the disabled space who obviously wasn't or something, and then they'd been late and then they got stressed. And then by the time they got home, it was like a massive ordeal. And they were putting on, for example, some classical pieces to help restore themselves. They weren't like just switching on the telly and zoning out. So this was kind of interesting. And so I had from this like, okay, here are some different uses. We also wanted to know, were people using music for walking? Because this is, we knew at that point metronome can be helpful, for example. So I had a basis to then build a survey. So just from these few kind of this small group. And then we surveyed people in the UK and in Switzerland. And we were looking at also in, differences in cultural use of music and things like this. And we found, yeah, actually, just from this small group, we'd really got to the core of the ways that people with Parkinson's were using music. And there were some differences to sort of ordinary everyday use. And these were things like a lot of people were listening to music for company because they were quite lonely. They were often at home all day on their own, and they weren't really able to interact with other people. And this kind of came about, there's so much stigma to do with Parkinson's. People had lost their friendship circles because they felt they were embarrassing. And like all these stories started to come out that weren't to do with walking and beat-based music. They were to do with, people's personal stories and their kind of connection with specific songs, like how it had helped people through their diagnosis, for example. It's one thing to have like a diagnosis of cancer and to know that you're fighting for your life. But when you learn that you have Parkinson's and you're going to have to live with your body betraying you, or, like it's the first year is very difficult to understand what this means. And some people had turned to music to help them through this, like I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, for
Right.
example.
Sure.
So there was many and varied different ways of using music. And one thing I always hate about research is when they say that they used music and they don't tell you what the music was. So I took great care to document all of this music and kind of attach it to which kind of uses it had and to see if there were any patterns. And it was clear that the range of music or the variety of music people with Parkinson's listened to was massive. Same, as everyone. Like there wasn't this association that always, oh, Parkinson's is an old person's disease, and therefore they just listen to old person's music and like Vera Lynn or something. No, they were listening to house music, heavy metal, the
Yeah.
full array. And this was also, a good way to try and sort of, I guess, debunk some of the myths about
Sure.
Parkinson's.
Sure.
And also the people that we were working with originally said we do not want to wait to the end of a 5-year project to find out what you found out. It's too long. We want to know as we go along. So dissemination, normally happens at the end, but tell us as you're learning as you go along.
Hmm.
So we were kind of starting to get these ideas about different types of playlists. And we thought most of us as researchers were also musicians. And we were like, "Ugh, no one ever actually does anything with music. Let's
Right.
make some concerts where we program the concert according to the actual uses of music. And we'll interview people with Parkinson's about why this song is special to them." And it was lovely, and also it was a way of us helping to embed our research into teaching, because again, there's this like stigma or stereotype that Parkinson's is an old person's disease. And, people are being diagnosed from 20 now. There's such a big increase in young onset Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It's really important that young people actually do know about this and we raise awareness. So we got the students to play the music and also got them to interview the people with Parkinson's. And we did this at the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester and at my School of Music in Lucerne in Switzerland. And it was lovely. And we were able to show the differences. Like Swiss people have a great interest in Swiss music, Swiss folk music. So
Oh,
yodeling, music about nature.
wow.
Yeah, and they call it this, it's kind of associated with the Swiss malaise. So it's about, really missing the sounds of the streams in the mountains and the
Oh,
cowbells and like, these sounds that are a part of Swiss life,
sure.
Alp horns and things like this. So that was really beautiful. And we sang some folk songs together. And then we were like, okay, well, we don't just want these this work from these concerts to disappear. Let's make a kind of website where we host them. And we worked with people with Parkinson's, like, do you want Spotify? Like, what do you want to access? And most people seem to prefer YouTube. So that's kind of
Well,
how we, curated things.
what an amazing project.
So in the paper where we've just submitted about songlines, which was the intervention that we did, I think I've listed 280 songs that we used throughout, these three different groups in Switzerland and the UK where we've trialed the project. So yeah, we've just added those into the playlist, and now we're going to try and link a Spotify list. So it's really a resource, obviously, for people with Parkinson's, but also for practitioners. Which kinds of songs do people with Parkinson's listen to for what? And for researchers, so they have some kind of ecologically valid, resource to go to for which music could actually be useful.
You have so many categories, and it just shows such a reflection on the different ways that Parkinson's is impacted by the musical experience. I would like to talk to you more about making music,
Hmm.
because I think that not only for me, but I think that potentially for others, there's a magic when the music is reacting to us
Hmm.
that I think is perhaps more difficult to explore than when we are reacting to music.
Yeah.
What is the impact that music has on you? That's an easy question, as opposed to, how do you feel
Yeah.
when you have the effect on the music?
Hmm.
Um, and it's not necessarily rhythmic, but I've thought a lot about it. My biggest hurdle with Parkinson's and music has been rhythm.
Hmm.
In that I when I'm conducting and physically manifesting rhythm,
Hmm.
I have a very difficult time in knowing if my rhythm has changed. My tempo, for
Yeah.
example, has
Hmm.
changed. Um, but if I stop conducting, in other words, if I'm like I do a lot of clinics where the
Hmm.
you know the conductor is working with his or her ensemble and I'm giving feedback and I'm listening and
Hmm.
stopping and we're talking. When I'm not manifesting the music, I can tell immediately that there's a tempo issue or not. Tempos have
Ah,
changed.
interesting. Okay.
My perception of rhythm is 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 probably even more heightened given the fact that I prepare to manifest rhythm in a different way. I'm
Yeah.
specifically practicing with metronome. I'm specifically practicing transitions from one tempo to the next. And so I'm much more cognizant of those tempo
Yeah.
changes. But nonetheless, I can tell immediately, for example, I learned to stop conducting in rehearsal and to stop moving in rehearsal, and can immediately monitor tempo in a much more effective way.
Hmm. There are some ideas that Parkinson's affects sort of proprioception and interoception.
Oh, talk to me
So,
about that.
proprioception is the kind of knowledge of where we are in space, and
Right.
interoception is that kind of internalized. Like exteroception would be like I'm feeling a touch, whereas interoception, like some people with Parkinson's have told me that they have like internal tremors. So it
Mm,
wouldn't be something that you could see, but they feel
mm,
like their internal organs are kind of tremoring. So
mm.
that would be an example of interoception. Whereas proprioception is really an understanding of the self and where you are in space. And I have not read the latest articles about this, but my postdoc who worked on the Parkinson's project is starting to look at proprioception and interoception in Parkinson's because um, she's a kinematic specialist. And I think she started to see, what people are saying isn't the same as what they're doing, which I think is also sort of what you're saying. Like when you're still, you have like, you're cognizant of it, but when you move, it interferes with your experience of it.
Yeah,
So that could be proprioception.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Something to read up on. I will certainly have a look at that.
The more that I, in through the rehearsal process, experiment with not moving and moving
Mhm.
it or how I move,
Mhm.
um, it becomes more and more clear that sort of my tempo issues are really tied to my physical motion, not tied to my
Mhm.
perception or my musicality.
Mhm. Yeah, I really like your description of manifesting rhythm. I think that would make a great title for an article, wouldn't it?
Yeah. When we as conductors talk about our role in, for example, rhythm, tempo,
Mhm.
conductors will initiate a tempo and they'll change a tempo. But it's really not the job of conductors to maintain tempos.
Okay.
Okay, because that really is the role of the ensemble within its organism to maintain
Mhm.
tempos, and
Yeah.
so in those moments when it's sort of grooving and the ensemble is cooking and we're not leading tempo, they're paying attention to other things and we're thinking bigger picture or contrast or
Mhm.
entrances, all that other kind of things. The issue is, however, that when I am not leading tempo, I
Mhm.
still have to maintain my relationship to tempo in my
Mhm.
passive sort of motions, and the
Mhm.
problem was that I wasn't. That the perception of the ensemble was I was changing things because I was changing things without
Yeah.
intent. I think most conductors learn through their career as they progress through their career that less is more.
Mhm.
And I think most conductors, as they mature and they get into their careers, they realize that that they're more responsible for the trunk of the tree and not so much the leaves. Like we let the
Yeah.
musicians kind of fill in the leaves, and so I think part of this is a natural progression for me as a conductor, excuse me. But the necessity then that Parkinson's presents me, the inability to overconduct, the inability to
Mhm.
control all those leaves, has forced me to sort of reevaluate my
Yeah.
approach, which in large respect has resulted in more meaningful performances for the audience, for the musicians, for me.
Mhm. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah. Do you think it's a paradox then that when you're in the flow state, like one of the ideas about flow state is that you lose your perception of time, or, you often don't realize where you are in time. And
Yeah.
then that this is kind of setting you free to actually move in time.
Right, which is why I'm not convinced that that it is this flow state that's happening
Yeah.
because I'm not lost.
No.
I'm very, very much
It
connected
sounds
with.
like you're completely in the moment more than
Yes,
anything
I'm
else.
more
Yeah.
found.
Yeah. Oh, that's really quite profound.
It's an honor for me to have this opportunity to speak to you,
Oh,
and I just think you're helping so many people.
I hope so. I'm really excited to be going to the World Parkinson's Congress.
So what will you
Uh,
be? Are you presenting there?
yeah, I am. I'm presenting the results of the song lines for Parkinson's intervention and obviously the playlist for Parkinson's. I'm doing a poster, like that's the main way that people present there. But I'm very honored because they put it in the top 15%. So I'm going to be part of the poster tour, which is really exciting and a great honor. So yeah, I've
Excellent.
got these little postcards with the playlist for Parkinson's kind of login and some pens and things like this. So yeah, I really just can't. I mean, I love that the World Parkinson's Congress because it's about people with Parkinson's and most of the people there are people with Parkinson's. It's not just talking to a room full of academics, it's really really like that direct connection. So I'm really interested to see what people think about songlines and playlist and what we can do with it moving forward. So yeah, it's a great opportunity.
So let me ask you just kind of just to as a final sort of thought. What would you love to have more research in? What are the areas
Oh,
what are the areas that you think we are missing or we need to expand? in terms of our
Mhm.
investigation of the interface of music and Parkinson's?
I guess for me, I mean, I've learned so much from listening to people with Parkinson's. And I think if we can have more collaboration, you know how you said that when you are, um, you might set the tempo, but then it's up to them to keep it going and that collaboration. Like, I think that's the most important thing that we can do as researchers is really, make sure we keep people with Parkinson's front and center of what we're doing. And how can we make it easier for people to be involved and, you know, make sure that those it's bi-directional influence, right? We're not trying to tell you, and like you are the experts in what it's like to live with Parkinson's, and it's our job as kind of citizens, scientific citizens, and also I feel like this about being a musician, as a musician citizen, to work together to come up with solutions that are sustainable. I mean, one of the worst things for me is when we finish a project and we can't keep the intervention going. So, that the personal connection and trying to um, just listen to each other, being able to choose your own music that helps you is gives people a massive sense of agency over their treatment. And that came just from listening to people with Parkinson's, trying to take what we know as scientists and build on it. I said, we don't have the answers, and the point is to work together to try and find solutions, right? That's how I look at it. So more listening, more connectivity and togetherness and kind of shared goals, I think.
That's wonderful. Thank you for spending some time with me.
I'm sure we'll have lots more conversations. But
Fantastic.
thank you for today. I really appreciate the time.